Feels like as fast as it came, it went. We're down to the final 2 weeks of the regular season. Nebraska's got 2 games left. Thank God they've got a bowl game, so we at least have something to look forward to a month after. But geez, it's already getting wrapped up, and it's sad. I really came to the realization because this was my last road trip of the season. I was in Atlanta this weekend for the Georgia game. I went to the Falcons game yesterday. I'll show you some pictures from that and give you my recap, my review on both those stadiums in a few minutes. But it just sucks that we're down to the wire. Fortunately, Nebraska is giving us something to look forward to in the offseason. In most cases, Nebraska finishes the season with 6 wins. They're on the outside looking in when it comes to any competitive talk about the Big Ten or the playoff, obviously. And I say the outside looking in. They are not on the outside. They're further than the outside looking in every single year. This season was the first time you could say, well, they actually kept it competitive until the month of November. But it doesn't matter. My point in saying all this is Nebraska, Matt Rhule specifically, is trying to build this team up to heights that we haven't seen, to heights that will allow him to recruit at the highest level, to get guys into this program who will be difference makers next year. Kind of like what he did this season, but now that they have this foundation that they've built, a 7, potentially 9-win team, when it's all said and done, Matt Rhule can go out and get the extra pieces he needs to get to that, what we thought was going to be the year 3 jump this year, right? So next year could be very special. A lot of it's going to come down to who they recruit and how they finish off this 2026 class. So that's something we'll talk about in a minute. I already see a chat from Nate talking about the Florida and Lane Kiffin stuff. Just to get everyone up to speed, I know a lot of people work and they aren't on Twitter all day like some of us are. Here's what's going on with Lane Kiffin. Lane has been at Ole Miss now for like 5 years. He has done a remarkable job rebuilding that school, the entire program. If you were to compare Ole Miss to a Big Ten school, they would be in the conversation with a Northwestern or a Minnesota, okay? Historically, they haven't done anything ever. And the few times they do have good seasons are similar to the Minnesota or the Northwestern season where it's a flash in the pan and they aren't able to carry that on. Ole Miss has been revived completely because Lane is obviously one of the best coaches in the entire sport. And right now you would argue he is the #1 coach in the sport, up there with like a Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning. And really it's Kirby and Lane, but that doesn't matter. The point here is the talk of this offseason, this late end of the year and going into this offseason was going to be about who LSU and Florida were going to hire as their head coaches, because those are the 2 open jobs that have the most publicity, that have the most money to spend, the biggest fan bases, the biggest support, and obviously who can attract big name coaches from other schools like in Ole Miss. So you've got Lane Kiffin over there at Ole Miss right now. He's leading I believe they're 10-1 right now. They have 1 more game left against Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl in 2 weeks, rivalry game. Obviously, they should win that. That would put them at 12-1. They would be going to the playoff, and they'd be competing for a national championship. They have a legitimate running back in Kewan Lacey. They have a legitimate quarterback in Trinidad. They have a legitimate backup in Austin Simons. So they have a ton of guys on offense who can get it done for them. There is no reason you would ever think Lane Kiffin would entertain any of the nonsense when he has a legit shot to make it to the national championship I think it's his 5th year as the Ole Miss head coach. But that's not what's going on. Lane Kiffin is a troll. Lane Kiffin likes to entertain and humor all of the people who are dragging his name around and tying him to all of these different jobs around the country. And given the time sensitivity with recruiting and what these big programs like LSU or Florida would expect for him to come in and start building up their program, since those 2 are really down in the dumps and both could possibly miss a bowl game. Florida will, LSU might. They want to get Lane in as quickly as possible. Okay, all of that said, I am really happy that I'm not an Ole Miss fan. So Lane puts out tweets like this all the time. Okay, I follow Lane. I love Lane. I pay attention to everything going on with Ole Miss. I really like Ole Miss. But they had this tweet that said like Utopia, and it was the big sellout. 68,000 people went to the Florida game this week. Ole Miss won that by 10 points. It was a big moment for Ole Miss because they secured 10-1, and they're obviously going to beat Mississippi State and go to the playoff. Lane puts currently in the good old days, which is such a troll, right? Because if you're an Ole Miss fan, you're like, oh my God, you're saying that the good old days were Ole Miss and now you're on your way out. Okay, typical Lane. Then Yahoo Sports puts this out today. I'm seeing it everywhere. It says Ole Miss gave Lane Kiffin an ultimatum to decide if he will be leaving the program for Florida or LSU before the Egg Bowl against Mississippi State. What that means is either sign an extension, commit to us, or go to LSU or Florida and get out. Read the date, November 28th. That's the day Nebraska plays Iowa. That's the day after Thanksgiving. That's before any SEC championship. That's before any playoff. And they would essentially be saying the ultimatum is, if you want to take one of those other jobs, get out. And we're going to have a guy take over, like Pete Golding, let's say, takes over as the interim, and he will lead the team in the playoff. Insane. The pressure, the money. I mean, everything is just so big now in college football that these other schools are making these big game time decisions. I say game time, but like, future altering decisions during the current college football season. And Ole Miss, for good reason, is basically saying, you need to leave if you're going to take another job, because we need to go and start our search. Because if they don't start their search fast enough, they're going to have to go up against Auburn. They're going to have to go up against either Florida or LSU. They're going to have to go up against all these other schools who are going to lose their coaches in the crossfire, like maybe in Missouri. So they want to make sure they can get their coach. So you have a lot of drama going on in college football right now. Lane Kiffin is at the head of it all, which makes sense because Lane Kiffin likes to play into all this nonsense. And already today we saw one coach get hired officially. Virginia Tech locked in James Franklin. Great fit. James Franklin was not equipped and not good enough to be the head coach at Penn State. He was not going to get them to the promised land, like I've talked about multiple times. I think Virginia Tech's a great fit for him. And maybe if he can build himself back up, he can get back into the Big Ten or the SEC or get a bigger job. But right now he needs to rebuild his name, because his name has been tarnished by his bad performances in big time games or in late season games. And his decision making hasn't been all that good. Kept Drew Aller when he should have been rocking with Bo Perbula. And James Franklin found a home. Interesting, because we're not even to the end of the season yet, and schools are making big time hires. So really interesting to watch. You guys know I love the reality show drama of college football, and we're in the thick of it. So get excited. Nate says that a source of mine, there's 9 zillion sources, right? Everyone says there's a source who's got a booster connection or whatever, but who knows what the truth is. I do believe it says 7-year, $93 million. I don't know what it's going to be. I do believe it'll be like the highest paying coach contract in college football, right? They're going to have to go and give him something ridiculous. So if it's $13 million a year, that's what it's going to take, then they're going to pay it. LSU and Florida have that kind of money to go and get those type of teams, or go and get those type of coaches. Sorry. Matthew says, curious what you think about the private equity deal that USC and Michigan are opposing. The deal sounds horrible to me, like never-ending debt, really. I haven't even read into it. It says that that's on pause, so because it's on pause, I haven't dug into it. But yeah, it's any of these things that are new and forward-thinking usually are a little bit ridiculous, so I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but I haven't read yet. Scott, thanks for being a member. He says, I received a free membership from I don't know who. I want to say thank you to whoever gave it out. It's very appreciated. It came from, I can tell you, it probably came from Rod. He's usually the one donating memberships, but there's like 4 or 5 people who fire memberships in our chat, so I will never know because I can't remember when you got it. Matthew says, Missouri will likely open up. They have a good coach that lots of schools should be looking at. Utah could open up if Whittingham retires. Yeah, people are waiting for Whittingham to retire, and Drinkwitz is probably going to get hired at some other school since Missouri's not a destination job. So there are a lot of jobs that could open up, which is so crazy. We're getting into that coaching carousel time. And when you hear about all these big names who are going to have to go and fill these other places, these other middle tier jobs like in Missouri are the ones who are going to feel that impact. Ferguson, both ESPN guys say we're going to Las Vegas to play Utah. I suppose you'd be happy with that, geographically speaking. Yeah, 100%. My dad's house is in Vegas. So I'll be there for Christmas, and I'll be at the Vegas Bowl no matter what. So I'm going to get the tickets the day they put them on sale. If Nebraska's playing in it, fantastic. If it's another team, I'll be there anyway. So hopefully it is the Vegas Bowl for my sake. But yeah, when I put out my bowl predictions last week, I put out that tiers list. I think that was extremely accurate. I did a lot of research on that. I did all the wins and losses for each team and what it would take to get in. So yeah, I had Nebraska versus either Utah, Arizona, or Arizona State in the Las Vegas Bowl. And I think, one of those 3 Big 12 teams will be in that game. And then either Nebraska, Illinois, who else would be like a 7 win? I don't know off the top of my head. It'd be a 7-8 win type of team who goes to that game. So really good chance that Nebraska ends up in Vegas. But there's also a good chance, I think equally good, that Nebraska ends up in Nashville Music City Bowl. So we'll see. Let's see. Matthew says if Ferentz retires, Iowa would be open this year too. I don't know when he'll retire, though. I just don't see him retiring yet. Let's see. Matthew says, I bet PJ gets some looks this offseason. Bielema gets attention. I think Bielema gets attention. I don't know about PJ Fleck. Minnesota is not good right now. Minnesota, that loss just keeps looking worse and worse for Nebraska. Minnesota hasn't done anything this year, and in any big moment, they've gotten their ass kicked. The only big moment they had where they didn't get their ass kicked was against Nebraska. They dominated, but I think that's more of a reflection on Nebraska than it is something positive about Minnesota. Minnesota, got worked by Oregon, and as good as Oregon is this season, they're not that good. Oregon is on the level of USC, in my opinion. They're very similar to USC or a Michigan, and they absolutely boat raced and embarrassed Minnesota. Minnesota could not tackle to save their life. They had no offensive production. It was embarrassing. I say all of that to say I'm so disappointed in Nebraska's loss to Minnesota because Minnesota is worse than Northwestern. I believe Minnesota is worse than Maryland. Minnesota is on the level of like a Rutgers this year, so it just gets uglier and uglier as I think about it. Let's see. Jose said that James Franklin agreed to a $9 million buyout from his original $50 million. Yeah, they're going to give him $9 million instead. Crazy. Still a lot of money. Matthew says Minnesota has severe limitations as a program. Yep. And PJ Fleck, he needed to strike while the iron was hot, and he had his opportunity to. I don't know if coaches didn't, or if other schools didn't want him, or what happened there. He missed his window. That was his really prime opportunity. And although he could go get a better job than Minnesota right now, like maybe a slight upgrade, I don't know how much better he could do. Minnesota gives him a lot of support. They're completely bought in on him because who else could Minnesota get? And he's shown some really positive things. So those are my thoughts on the coaching carousel going on right now. One more thing I wanted to talk about before I jump in. There's been a lot of conversations about Emmett Johnson, and I get a lot of messages asking, Connor, why isn't Emmett Johnson a legitimate Heisman candidate? And why is Emmett Johnson, the leading rusher in all these categories? And what's the difference between him and these other guys who are getting more love, like a Jeremiah Love? No pun intended. Okay. Emmett Johnson does not have what we would call a Heisman moment. Nebraska does not have a signature win. And without those two things, you have no shot to have a Heisman contending player on your team. Emmett Johnson ran for 165 yards. I think he had like 20 yards receiving against USC. So that was a 185-yard output with a touchdown. Really big, but he didn't win the game. It was at home. Players who are Heisman worthy and on teams who deserve to have a Heisman type of player, they would be able to win that game. Against Michigan, Emmett Johnson total, I believe, 80 yards. No touchdowns. Nebraska lost that game. So the two opportunities for him to really separate himself and say, hey, I'm not only a really good running back, but I'm also a Heisman caliber running back, they came and went. And without those, it's hard for anybody to look at him as a serious contender. So no question, Emmett is a legitimate back. Emmett is one of the best in the country. I mean, he's a legitimate top 4 running back in college football right now. Legitimate. But yeah, he's not a Heisman caliber player because he's not making the plays that matter in the games that matter, right? So unfortunate truth. And I know it's like almost like negative and raining on the parade, but it's a question I get so often. People are really confused. And I get why there's confusion when his stat lines are so big and Nebraska hypes him up as much as they do because he's freaking awesome. This is zero disrespect to Emmett. It's just the reality of the situation and why the Heisman respect hasn't come his way as much as Nebraska fans would have hoped it would. You know what I'm saying? One more thing. I saw this on Twitter today. So you got Missouri, is Missouri ranked right now? I think Louisville's ranked right now. They're like going to be 25 maybe. They lost to Clemson at home, though. I could knock them out of the rankings. And then Tennessee. Oh, no, Missouri's going to be ranked because Missouri won their game this week. Missouri beat whoever they played by. Oh, they played Mississippi State and they kicked their ass. So Missouri's going to be ranked. Louisville will fall out. Arizona State's not in. Nebraska's not in. Tennessee's in. So these are all very similar comparables to Nebraska in terms of their win-loss records against their best opponents. These are their Power 4 wins, their average margin of defeat, their ranking or their win-loss record against ranked opponents. So it's interesting when you look at this because there's been so much, negative about Nebraska's season being 7-3. And when you really look at it, it's like, wait, Nebraska's actually playing as well as Louisville, Missouri, ASU, Tennessee. I think that's something to be said, and it's very impressive that Nebraska, although it has been a bumpy road to get to that 7-3 and there are no signature victories, they're rocking with their backup quarterback. And if they could finish with 8 or even 9 wins, it would be an impressive season. I talked about at the beginning of the year how I don't want to readjust expectations. So at the beginning, the expectation, at least Mine was Nebraska has to get to 9 wins. That was kind of the non-negotiable. Get to 8, like, okay, I won't feel great. Got to get to 9. And they're on track to do that, right? They're on track to get to 10 with a bowl game. It's going to be tough. I truly believe this week against Penn State is like a 60-40 game. I think it's a 60% chance the Penn State wins, 40% Nebraska wins. Now, the odds don't say that. The odds have Penn State pegged at a 9.5-point favorite. My God, that seems big. Really quick, if you want to bet on that game, go to brothrow.com, sign up, use the promo code CORN, get a $10 free bet when you sign up. Right here, you bet on Nebraska plus 9.5. I've already got mine open. So I've got 200 on Nebraska right here to pay 200. If I were to go and put this on FanDuel, I think it's like 200 pays 182, something like that. I'm not taking a juice cut. So I am going to get my full payout here, even money, and I'm betting it on Brothrow. But anyway, my point is 9.5 is freaking crazy. You want money line? $50 on the money line pays you 142. So they think there's a 33% chance Nebraska wins this game, essentially. I think it's more like a 40% chance they win. And I think as good as Penn State has been, in the last few weeks, bouncing back after moving on from James Franklin, they're still, dealing with a lot of issues. They have a lot of talent, but they're not an elite team. They've got a lot of talent, but they aren't killing teams. Even this last week against Michigan State, if you guys watched it, Penn State just kind of wore them out. Michigan State had a few mistakes. They started this new quarterback who I believe is a freshman. Good quarterback, not great. And Penn State, just imposed their will down the stretch with their 2 running backs. They really ran the ball hard at them. So Nebraska's going to have their opportunities. I'm really looking forward to this game. I just saw a crazy comment in the chat. I don't even know where that came from. I have to ignore it because you guys are crazy with some of the things you say. Taylor says, worried about the 2-headed dragon Penn State has at running back, hoping we can contain them. I don't actually have that much fear in that 2-headed monster, right? Nebraska's done a good job on defense, and Nebraska's going to sell out to stop the run. Penn State's quarterback is no better than TJ Lateef, in my opinion. And because of that, it's going to give Nebraska some favorable opportunities to create some chaos, to get some sacks, to hopefully force a turnover. Nebraska needs a couple plays, right? They need a couple moments where they get opportunistic and they take advantage. If they can do that, they are going to have a very good shot at creating chaos for that quarterback and making it so he's never comfortable all night. And although they're going to focus on running the ball, Nebraska stacking the box should be enough. Do I think they're going to run for 200 yards? I'd say closer to like 170. But, Nebraska's going to have to figure out how to stop the pass when they're loading up the box. And they're going to be in some one-on-one situations with some really good receivers. They've got Trebor Pena. They have this other guy. What's his name? Number 5. He came from Kent State, I believe. It doesn't matter. Point is this. Penn State's got some really good players. Nebraska's going to have to win some one-on-one matchups. And if they can, they're going to be in it all the way to the end. So that 10-point line just seems ridiculous to me. This feels like a 21-17 type of game, 20-17. And it comes down to whoever, doesn't miss the tackle when it matters. You got 2 strong running games. You got 3 backs in Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, and Emmett Johnson, who are all going to be featured a ton on Saturday. And which one's going to make the most guys miss? Which one's not going to get tackled, right? Which one can make the explosive play and score? Richard says Emmett's Heisman campaign is just a PR move by the university to show that it will back talented players in the media game. I doubt Emmett gets to New York, but it's great for the optics. Yeah, 100%. I respect it. You've got to do that. 1,000%. If you got a player who's that level, you got to make sure you hype him up as much as possible. Jose says EJ is first team all-conference and possibly first team all-American, but not the Heisman Trophy. We need to get about, 1,800 yards, and right, Connor, no big game other than UCLA, respectively. Yeah, Jose, he would need, I don't even know if it's 1,800. He'd need a little bit more production than he's had, but more importantly, it's the wins. You need wins to win the Heisman or to get that national recognition. And unless you're a freak like a Travis Hunter who's constantly making game-changing plays, and the reason Colorado was as good as they were last season, as we can see, their drop-off has been about 5 wins without Shedeur and Travis, and a big part of that, in my opinion, is Travis. Anyway, Emmett needed more wins, and he needed key wins, the Michigan or the USC. And you can't get the Michigan or the USC, then your team's not deserving of a Heisman player. I think that's the way they look at it. You're saying you don't believe you beat Iowa until the clock hits 0. Jake says Ethan Grunkmeyer reminds me of a worse Dylan Raiola. I think that's true. He's I don't know if I would compare him to Dylan, though. He can throw it. He's got a really good arm. He's got a good deep ball. He can move around a little bit. I would put him on par with Dylan. If you had to tell me right now I was going to tell you right now which quarterback I thought was better, based on this season, Grunkmeyer looks pretty similar to Dylan. Dylan's had some issues. 10X says, how big of a swing will Nebraska take in the portal in January? How many will they take? Okay, well, let's talk about recruiting. So Matt Rhule went on the press conference today, and he talked about how the 2026 class is shaping up, and they might only add a couple more guys, and that they're going to focus on the transfer portal, which I thought was fantastic. You look at Nebraska's depth chart and what's going to come back for next year. Keep in mind, depth chart, Nebraska 2026 or 2025. Keep in mind, Nebraska is one of the youngest teams in the entire Big Ten, and they have all of this money to spend to retain their roster. So in theory, Nebraska is going to retain Isaiah Hunter and Ja'Cory Barney. You'll obviously get back Keelan Smith, Quinn Clark, and Cortez Mills. So they have a really strong receiving core coming next year. At most, they're going to take one receiver, in my opinion, unless they take a young guy who they're going to develop. But as in terms of a guy who can make instant impact, it would be one. I would say no more than that. On the line, you're going to return Justin Evans, Henry Latovsky, and Elijah Pritchett, which means you got to replace Rocco Spindler, Turner Corcoran, Tyler Knock. You got to figure out who can come in and play that right guard or that right tackle spot in that right guard spot. So they're going to spend money to get offensive linemen. How much? Who knows what it'll take? $1 million each. At tight end, you got Luke Lindenmeyer coming back. Carter Nelson's in the fold as well. And then what's the other guy's name? Eckenberg? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. They have tight ends, so I don't know that they would go for a tight end. Quarterback, they should pay Latif, and then they'll have Latif and Rhule'S. Running back, Emmett is probably going to the NFL. I would just have to guess. I'm going to assume he is. They're going to have to get one running back, if not two. If they only get one running back, then they would have to say, okay, well, we're going to trust that Isaiah Mosey is going to be our shifty guy, or Mekhi Nelson, and then we're going to go get I don't even want to say a Dowdell, but a guy who's bigger and can handle the load. So running back, they're at least grabbing one. Williams Nwaneri's back at defensive end. You're going to lose your Jack and Deshaun McCullough. On the interior, losing Elijah Judy. They're going to have to get at least one interior, and they might even go out and get one Jack linebacker. But Dylan Rogers has been playing well. I think they're going to lose Willis McGahee to the transfer portal. At linebacker, Dawson Merritt's been good this year so far as a true freshman. You're going to lose Javen Wright, though. They're going to have to at least get one linebacker. You're going to lose Marquise Watson-Trent. At corner, you have Donovan Jones coming back. You have Andrew Marshall coming back. You're losing Sierra Wright. So they're probably going to have to get at least one DB. You're also losing Deshaun Singleton. You're losing Marquise Buford. So maybe two DBs. They're going to, in my opinion, just looking at what they're going to have to reload with. And keep in mind, Nebraska is going to be fighting next year to get to the playoff. Next year's a playoff team. Oh, and look at their recruiting ranking. This is the 2026 class right now. Nebraska ranks 18th in the Big Ten. They're dead last. They have 10 total commits. I mean, they're getting their ass kicked. They are not taking this class that seriously from the high school ranks. The 2027 and 2028 are going to be crazy, like top 3, top 4 in the Big Ten. But this one, not so much. So if I had to guess what they're going to do in the portal, 12. 12 players, 8 of them instant impact. 8 guys coming from big-time schools. Tennessee, Oklahoma State, Penn State, places that are losing their coach, maybe an Ole Miss, who knows? They're going to go out and get guys who can make impact right away and who can get Nebraska into that playoff conversation. They did a great job last year. Dane Key, stud, has made some big plays. And Isaiah Hunter, stud, made some big plays. On the offensive line, Rocco Spindler has been one of their best and most consistent offensive linemen. Elijah Pritchett's coming along. Deshaun McCullough has been great, even though he was hurt in that last game. He'll be back this week. Who else? Was it Justin Rhett who did pretty well this year? Andrew Marshall did well this year. I mean, they've had a really good portal stretch. So, yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Charberry says Carter Nelson's going to the portal, and that's the big question. Which guys are going to the portal? You have no freaking idea. They're going to have to reload, though. They're going to have to get some guys who can make an instant impact, especially on the line, because Nebraska wants to compete next year and not play around with this bullshit, lose to Minnesota or lose to USC at home in a blackout when you're just as good as USC is, right? They got to step it up. Since it's mythical, historically speaking, what does a Matt Rhule year 4 look like to you? I think a Matt Rhule year 4 looks like what year 3 was supposed to look like. A year 4 is like a 9 or 10 win competing for the playoff. It's Dylan Rhule'S hopefully steps into his true self and doesn't hold on to the ball too long, doesn't take that many sacks. The offensive line helps him a little bit more. Maybe he runs a little bit more, and the offense hums. like it hasn't hummed yet. The defense needs to continue to improve. Obviously, they took a little bit of a drop off, it felt like, after last season. But the defense has still been serviceable, and I wouldn't say that any of Nebraska's losses this year were due to the defense being inept. Outside of maybe Michigan. Michigan was on the defense. They couldn't make a tackle to save their damn life. But at the same time, the offense didn't get it done either. So defense is pretty good. It's really the offense needs to take that step. They got to figure that out this offseason, and I think a lot of that's going to have to do with the offensive lineman they get, the running back they get, and then the development, player development, and offensive development. Like, how much better can that offense look? Because right now it's been just kind of weak. Hopefully this week with TJ Lateef it looks better, though. We'll have to see. Matthew says next year's schedule is quite a bit tougher than 2025. Not sure I see us threatening to make the CFP in 2026. I looked at this last time. It's not that threatening. Nebraska football schedule. Wait, my keyboard's off again. Nebraska football schedule 2026. So it looks threatening based on who these teams have right now. But okay, I see 3 wins out the gate: Ohio, Bowling Green, North Dakota. I see Maryland as a win. Washington at home should be a win. Illinois as a toss-up should be a win. Iowa should be a win. Michigan State should be a win. Rutgers should be a win. That's 9 games right there. I mean, you have toss-ups with Iowa and Illinois. Oregon on the road. Ohio State at home. Indiana at home. Okay, well, let's be real. Oregon is losing their quarterback. Oregon is going to lose a lot of guys to the NFL. Are they going to reload? Absolutely. But will Nebraska? Absolutely. So that's a game that should be competitive. Ohio State. Nebraska has almost beaten Ohio State multiple times in the last 5 years. Most recently when they went to Ohio State with Dylan Raiola as a true freshman, the year Ohio State won the national championship. Any given Saturday. This time, it's at home. They could win that game. Indiana is going to be really tough, but Indiana's losing their quarterback. They're going to lose their running back. They're going to lose a receiver. They're losing their best DBs. I mean, Indiana really built for this year, and they're going to have to reset next year. So, yeah, they have a great coach. They're going to have good recruits from the transfer portal, whatever. But this isn't some daunting schedule that Nebraska can't get through. I think that's totally false. Anyone who's saying, oh, this next year's schedule is going to be so much harder, it's going to be slightly harder. Instead of Michigan and USC, which the equivalent here is like Oregon and Ohio State, now you got to add in Indiana. So you got one more really tough opponent. And it just is what it is. But Nebraska's getting better as well. So I'm excited for that. Let's see. Yeah, next year's schedule is a bear right now, but teams are not going to look the same they do today. You guys get too worried about it. Twevin says, Penn State's running for 400 on us. LMAO, we are not winning. What? Why would Penn State run for 400 on Nebraska? Let's see. I'm just going to go and look. Maybe I didn't do the proper research on Penn State. So before I speak too soon, Twevin, let me make sure I'm not the idiot. I'm going back to Penn State and what they've done in the last couple of games. Penn State against Michigan State, Penn State against Iowa, and Penn State against Northwestern. I'm not going to compare Indiana or Ohio State because those are 2 totally different teams. Okay. Penn State ran for 240 on Michigan State. Nebraska has a better defense than Michigan State. Penn State ran for 173 on Iowa. Nebraska and Iowa have very comparable defenses. Penn State ran for 137 on Northwestern. Nebraska has a better defense than Northwestern. Yeah, I mean, what would I bet on this? I'd bet you 200. So I'd give you plus 200 odds. So I risk 200. You risk 100. Fair? Just message me if you want to do that bet. I would totally do that. Basically, $100 would pay 200 for you. Pay double your money. You're on drugs. Penn State's not rushing for 400. Penn State's not rushing for 300. Penn State is going to try to rush for 200. And I don't even know if they're going to get there. I think that's their goal, is to run for 200. But Penn State's going to throw the ball in Nebraska, just so we're all clear. They're going to try to run it, but they're going to throw it too. They're not rushing for more than 200 on Nebraska. 220 maybe, if shit gets, in a worst case scenario, Penn State goes crazy and Nebraska just looks like absolute shit. Okay, Penn State hits 240. I don't see that happening. Most likely Penn State finishes with around 175 rushing yards against Nebraska. 400 is absolutely crazy. I think you're just trolling. Let's see. Yeah, Twevin, Nebraska's not going to Nebraska's had a poor run defense at times this year. Nebraska's not going to let Penn State run all over them. They're going to stack the box and they're going to stop it. So, yeah, it's not happening. Matthew says, not worrying, just being realistic. As of now, I predict 7-5 for 2026, with 6-6 being more likely than 8-4. Yeah, I am on a totally different page than you, Matthew. The problem, I think, the disconnect between you and I, you're putting a lot of respect on the teams currently, and I'm not. Nebraska right now is not going to be the Nebraska that we watch next year, and neither will Oregon, Ohio State, or Indiana. They're going to be way different. And the same could be said for Illinois. The same could be said for a lot of those teams on the schedule. I can't even look ahead to those because the transfer portal is going to change so much. You know, the transfer portal is going to change these teams drastically. And Nebraska now being in a position to go and get more guys, not only because of the money, but also because, like Matt Rhule talked about, how they've got more money to spend now, and how he's emphasized the recruiting, and they've done all this stuff to market this program. And now Nebraska is going to get to 8 wins at least this season, it looks like, very least 8-5. Yeah, they're going to do really well in the portal. I'm looking forward to it. Jeremy says, Penn State's not running for 400. I also don't think we win this game. Yeah, right now, I would say Nebraska loses this game by 3 or 4. That's my pick. I would say Penn State wins 21-17 or 24-20. That's how I'm going to go with it. Brad, thanks for being a member. Thanks for being here. He says, Connor, love your thoughts. We're in good shape. All gravy from here until January. Yeah, that's the thing. Right now, it's all positive. It's really exciting. Smoking Cactus says, college football changes week to week. Any team wins seems to win at any time. And that's very true. Iowa's mid. Like, Iowa's like a Nebraska, okay? Like, talent-wise, they're very similar, like a Nebraska. Iowa could have beaten USC this year. They did beat Penn State. They could have beaten Michigan this year. They could have beaten Ohio State probably. They almost beat Indiana. I mean, any team can win any game. Jose says, Connor, can we wish Jeff Sims good luck as he takes on Colorado Clown Show on the road again? Hoping Jeff Sims beats those guys. That'd be an awesome revenge situation for Jeff Sims to come out positive on that. Crazy that Jeff Sims going back to Colorado, but this time with Arizona State. Who would have freaking thought? So this week's game, talk about it for a sec. I'll do bigger preview on like Thursday night, but you know, it's a night game, and people were talking about how this could be a crazy environment. I do not see this being a crazy environment. I don't know how many fans are going to be in the stadium. Will it be 50,000? Will it be 60? It's a night game in the cold in Happy Valley. They're fighting for a bowl game. They have to win. It's a must win. Both these last two are must wins to get back to a bowl. But outside of that, I don't think fans are all that motivated and that excited. I'm not sure if students will even be at this game. Like, it's not that big of a draw. Late night, it's not cold. So my guess is this isn't that crazy of an environment. The energy around Penn State's a little bit dead. Their Super Bowl was against Indiana a couple weeks ago. And although the team will be motivated, I just don't see this being like a crazy environment. The tickets are also extremely cheap. If you want to go to a game, it's a bitch to get to. But you can sit on a 50-yard line, I saw, for like $80 or $75. Fantastic seats. They'll never be that cheap again. So the tickets are cheap because no one wants to go. That's it, Smoking Cactus. Nobody wants to go and watch this Penn State team play. The fans are checked out and on to the next. You know, Penn State, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, so the Penn State students might not even be on campus now. Like, people aren't going to this game the way that they would have if Penn State was a really competitive team. Yeah, students are on break. So I heard Matt Rhule talk about, it's a really tough environment. It's loud. I don't know how loud it's going to be, but I have very low expectations for the environment. The team is going to be prepared. The team is going to be amped up. Penn State's extremely motivated. The stadium and the atmosphere are going to be kind of dead. That's my opinion. So I went to a game this week. I just wanted to share my experience because I go to games all the time, as you guys know. I went to Georgia, Texas. I flew into Atlanta with my dad on Thursday. Went to dinner, hung out, went shopping. Friday, He and I drove over to Athens, Georgia, hour and 40-minute drive. Now, I've been to like 30 stadiums around the country, just college football. And I've had some really, really awesome experiences. I've talked about them on this channel. One of my best being an SEC game. Actually, a few of my best being SEC games. But one of them being Alabama and LSU back in 2019. Joe Burrow versus Tua Tagovailoa. Joe Burrow ended up winning that game. I think it was like 41-38, something like that. Fantastic finish. I had LSU +6. Who would have thought? Anyway, my hopes are always high for SEC games. I went to Ole Miss last year against Georgia. Ole Miss won 28-10. Jackson Dart got hurt on the first drive of the game. They still kicked their ass. It was awesome. Rushed the field, whatever. I go to Georgia for the very first time. Campus, awesome. Small town feel, really cool environment. It's fall, so the wind is blowing the leaves all around. Obviously, if SEC fans are there, they're very passionate. They dress really nice. I mean, it's different. Like, no disrespect to Nebraska, but it's just a different vibe. I was telling my friend today, when you go to an SEC game, people dress up. It's like it's a cultural event. So everyone takes it very seriously. I go to Nebraska games and I see people wearing sweats and hoodies. It's not a problem. It's just they treat it differently in the SEC, right? So it's just a different vibe. So the stadium is on campus and you can literally stand and you can stand on the sidewalk outside the stadium and you can watch the game from there. It's sweet. And then you're by the student area, I don't know what you call it, but where the bookstore is, and you just walk up that little step area and you're right into the stadium. So very cool. I'm gonna show you a couple pictures of it. And this is the game day shirt I got. Texas versus Georgia. Pretty freaking awesome. Let's see. Why isn't my thing? Oh, keyboard. Okay. Little tailgate area. Tailgates are awesome in the SEC. They all had their TVs out, obviously. There's just so many areas where they've got tailgating. We were watching the Texas A&M game. Crazy how they came back. This is that student area. The bookstore's right behind me. So you walk up these steps, and then that's the stadium. It's freaking cool. So you can see, if you stand right here, you can see into the stadium. So awesome. Okay, it looks huge. I mean, it is huge. It was built in the 1920s. They've obviously added on to it. It holds 93,000 people. But yeah, just an awesome place. So this is when they're doing the national anthem. Everyone has light up wristbands. So they're wearing these light up wristbands and then they're changing the colors. If you've ever seen those at concerts, they're changing the colors throughout the game. Crazy. The production at this game was all time. Like Nebraska's blackout, obviously amazing production. It was freaking awesome. The difference is Nebraska isn't winning right now, so you don't have the same buy-in from the fans like you do at Georgia. It's just a different vibe. They get into it the entire way through. They know they're going to win. There's like this crazy confidence. They're waving their pom-poms. It was fun. Here's another angle. See the pom-poms just going? I love the pom-poms. Such a good vibe, good energy. People were so friendly. Sat on the 50, or the 40, sorry. Is that right? Yeah. 38-yard line. These seats were... I think $4.40 each. They're not cheap. But if you're going once, gotta soak it in. Next day I went to the Falcons game. Such a different vibe going to the NFL. Oh, we were down. So this was actually cool. The tickets I got were $400 each. They were on the 50, like dead 50, I'll show you. It was a low attendance game because it was against the Panthers. Panthers aren't that good. Panthers did end up winning though. In overtime. Really good game. The tickets I got give you access to the lounge underneath the stadium. So the lounge has free alcohol, free food. The food's fire. And you can actually see the visiting team coming out of their locker room. There's Andy Dalton. I'm just sitting at the window eating. McMillan. I'm literally sitting at the window just eating. When Xavier Legette walked by at halftime, there he is right there. I put a heart up like this to him. He did it back. He's a cool guy. I like watching his interviews. But yeah, that's a little downstairs. So Mercedes-Benz Stadium, legit. Like I've been to SoFi a bunch, obviously. This stadium's sick. Awesome stadium. What? The flags. It was cool. Wasn't that high attendance, but good vibes all around. Got my Georgia hat on. Dad had a Georgia hat. Got a sick Georgia hoodie. Little Nike Tech Fit one. And then, that lounge we were in gives you field access. So you literally can watch on the field if you want instead of stand from your seats, which it's hard to watch on the field because you've got guys kind of blocking you. But yeah, we're on the field watching these guys warm up and stuff, which is pretty cool. So anyway, that was my experience in Georgia. Go to a Georgia game. I will say it was one of the coolest stadiums I've been to, and the town was awesome. I did not meet the UGA Bulldog. Did not meet the UGA Bulldog. Spoiler says flights are expensive as hell. You know, that's not the expensive part. My flight from Phoenix was $270. Cheap as hell. The expensive part is the hotel. So I was with my dad, so we roll different. When I go by myself to games, which I do plenty, I try and stay at cheap places for like $500, right? For 2 nights. When I was with him, we stayed at the Hyatt Place in downtown Athens. It was a 7-minute walk or 8-minute walk from the stadium, and then it was right outside all the bars and restaurants in downtown. $1,500 a night. Same with the Graduate in Lincoln. Graduate in Lincoln, I believe, was like $900 a night when I went for the Michigan game, as opposed to staying out by the Lincoln airport, and I paid, I think, $300 a night when I went solo without my dad. So yeah, the flights aren't the expensive thing. The hotels are always the crazy part in these small college towns, you know? The tickets aren't even expensive, because you could have gone to the Georgia game for like $150 and just sat in the nosebleeds, whatever. Same with the Falcons game. Falcons game, you could have gotten tickets, I think, for like $125, $120. So, I mean, the best seats in the stadium were what I sat in, and they were $395, whatever they were. So, yeah, none of that's expensive. The hotels are the pricey thing. Smoking Cactus says, I know one thing I looked at for tickets. Their site has mostly open tickets. I hope Husker Nation shows up and we put a lot of red in there. I don't know how easy it is to get to Happy Valley. Actually, I do know. I went to Happy Valley. It's not easy to get there. You have to fly into an airport like an hour plus away. Penn State, Nebraska tickets. Let's look. I don't know that a lot of Nebraska fans would go to this game. We'll see. Just don't know. They start at $7. It's freaking nuts. Okay. Screen share. Look at that. Look at how many tickets there are available. This game's going to be freaking empty. I'm telling you. This game is going to be empty. Look at this. The availability is off the charts. No one wants to go. Everyone's selling their tickets. Look at that. Just dense green everywhere. 50-yard line, $95. What's that? Like the 20th row? $45. Like what? Look at these are great seats, 45. I mean, if you live in the area, it's easy to get to. Go down to the game. Penn State fans won't be there, but maybe some Nebraska fans will be. We'll see. Cheap as hell to go. 46. How good these seats are. $46. Could you imagine thinking you could go to a Penn State game this year when they're competing for the national championship for only $46? Yeah, it's cheap to go. Yeah, Steven says State College is in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, that's the problem. Jose says, Connor, over under TJ pass attempts at 18. How many did he have against UCLA? Let me check really quick. Against UCLA, he had 15. This week, I'd say probably he hits 20. I would guess 20. Splurge just talking about flights to Pennsylvania. Yeah, the flight, even that, it's not that expensive. The problem with the flight to Pennsylvania is the rental car. You got to rent a car. So that adds on an extra $250 because you're flying into Pittsburgh, which I could fly to Pittsburgh for relatively cheap. But it's the rental car that adds on to it, so it makes it way more expensive. A flight from Phoenix to LAX is 38 minutes, I think, is how long it took last time. Ardwin, yes, we did talk about Franklin to Virginia Tech. I think it's really good for him. He has a really good schedule next year, too. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with them like immediately, if he's going to be able to get a bunch of guys out of the transfer portal or how he rolls. But Virginia Tech should be competitive pretty quick. James Franklin isn't a bad coach, obviously. He's a really good coach. He's just not good enough for Penn State when you want to be on the same level as an Ohio State or a Michigan. So I totally get why he's not a fit there, but hopefully it works for Virginia Tech, because I like Virginia Tech. I think it'd be cool to watch them be good again. Let's see. Smoking Cactus says flying to Philly round trip is $500. I was looking at Pittsburgh. It's like $900. Well, right now, if you book it now, it's expensive. But if you book it in advance, it's not. I flew to Philly from Phoenix for like, I think $300. And that was, I think, a month and a half notice, maybe 5 weeks notice. So it's not expensive unless you book last minute. Book anything last minute. Okay, I went to Vegas. So a month ago, my dad called me. He's like, hey, Nebraska's playing, Minnesota on Friday night, which means you can come to Vegas on Saturday. So it's like 2 days before. I'm like, yeah. So, because he lives in Vegas and we'll just go gamble, right? We'll watch football on Saturday, gamble. Sunday, I fly home. I look at flights. It was $315 for me to fly from Phoenix to Vegas, 45-minute flight. So I did it. It was $315, but expensive because last minute. If I book that in advance, I can go to Vegas for like, I think round trip, $90, 75 sometimes. I went from Orange County to Phoenix for $29. I booked that 3 weeks in advance. That was just a dead leg on Frontier. $29 though. Crazy. Everything's about when you book it. That's all it is. Ardwin says, I think he's going to do real well. Yeah, I mean, James Franklin was a good coach. It's just, it all depends on what he can attract to Virginia Tech and how fast, The ACC is a lot easier than the Big Ten. I went and looked at his schedule next year. It's freaking easy. He could start off 5-0, Todd says, how many Penn State players follow Franklin to Virginia Tech? 15 or so is my guess. I think they'll have a lot. Any guys who didn't play significant time? 100%. Yeah. Smoking Cactus says, if someone wants to go now, yeah, booking last minute around Thanksgiving, you're screwed. You have zero shot. So I agree with you. I can't afford to book flights last minute around Thanksgiving or Christmas, so I don't do it. But I do agree with you 100%. It's expensive to do stuff last minute. Last week, there were some big games. I didn't get to watch many of them. I had to watch replays. The only ones I watched Minnesota, Oregon. We talked about that. Minnesota got just skull drug. They sucked. Watched Louisville, Clemson. I bet on Clemson. Clemson's obviously better than Louisville in terms of talent. They just need to show up, and they finally did. Ohio State killed UCLA. Indiana, slow start, but beat Wisconsin, didn't cover. The Texas A&M game was freaking insane. OU Bama was crazy. I thought OU was going to win that game. And then I listened to all the outside noise all week. I was watching podcasts, listening to shows like, oh, Bama. I was like, okay, Bama's going to win. I took Bama -5.5 like a freaking idiot, even though I liked Oklahoma to cover that. And Oklahoma went outright. Oklahoma's still in position now for the playoff. I mean, Oklahoma's probably going to make the playoff. They play Mizzou this week. Next week, they play LSU. They're going to go 2-0 in those games, and they'll make the playoff, which good on them. They had a hiccup in the middle of the season because John Mateer got hurt, but they've been strong ever since. Texas, going to be a potential bowl matchup for Nebraska. Texas is going to be the favorite in this Texas A&M game, right? They're going to beat Arkansas this week, almost certainly. They're going to bounce back off that loss. But then you got Texas A&M at home. If they lose that game, they're going to be 8-4. And if Nebraska plays an SEC team, very well could be Texas, either Texas or Vandy. So keep an eye out on that. That'd be a very fun matchup to see Nebraska go against Texas, especially since Texas wouldn't have that many bowl opt-outs. Like Arch Manning would play, obviously. So could be an interesting one. What else was in here that was intriguing? Georgia Tech almost lost to freaking Boston College, who's won one game all year. I was sick to my stomach. I had a parlay with Georgia Tech -2.5. I lost. Georgia Tech, I've got a future on them to win the ACC championship game. As long as they beat Pitt next week at home and they're a 2.5-point favorite, they will be playing in that against Virginia. And honestly, I've got 300 to win 600. I like my odds. Plus 200 odds to win the ACC when you're playing against Virginia, and they'll be the favorite most likely. Give it to me. USC Iowa was a heartbreaker. Iowa started off so hot, and then USC just trudged back in. Michigan Northwestern was one of the best games the entire day. I watched this game. Later, obviously, not day of. Michigan should have lost. I really wish they would have. Northwestern looked freaking awesome. I mean, not awesome in terms of like explosive and that great, but they looked awesome in terms of how hard they fought. They created turnovers. They stopped them on fourth down multiple times. I mean, Northwestern did everything they could, and then Michigan kicked that walk-off field goal to keep their playoff hope alive. Northwestern plays Minnesota this week. They're a 3.5-point favorite. It's at Wrigley Field again. I will be on Northwestern to get bowl eligibility. I think they're going to beat Michigan or Minnesota by 7. Minnesota's so trash, and Northwestern's awesome. Cincinnati loses at home to Arizona. Heartbreaker. Love Cincinnati. They're a 2.5-point dog this week at home against BYU. I'll probably be betting on Cincinnati, hoping they bounce back. I've got a little soft spot in my heart for Cincinnati. I want them to do well. LSU beats Arkansas barely. That was a crazy one. Jeff Sims continues his streak, beats West Virginia. Primed for a big game at Colorado this week. Illinois. crushed. Penn State, they didn't look that good against Michigan State. They separated in the fourth quarter. That was a dogfight until the fourth quarter. Michigan State, is so... You watch Nebraska kick their ass too. They're just whatever. Penn State's just... They're not the Penn State we thought they were going to be. So what else is in here? Washington kills Purdue. Washington's like a Nebraska this year. They're going to have a similar record. Who do they still have to play? Oregon and UCLA. Should beat UCLA, then they play Oregon. So they'll finish with a 8-4 record most likely. Very similar to Nebraska. But anyway, those are the games. Those are my initial thoughts. Cow Show says, I'd rather play Texas than Vandy. I'd like to play either one. I don't know. It'd be more fun to play Texas because of the history, but it'd be exciting to see Vandy. Diego Pavia is awesome. I really like watching him, so that'd be cool. You want to see the big games this week? Okay, here's what's coming up this week. Friday night, Florida State at NC State. Exciting. Mizzou at OU. Decently exciting. Louisville at SMU. For the ACC, that's exciting because SMU is still competing for a spot. Minnesota at Northwestern. I'm excited for that one. I'm going to be watching that in the morning. Northwestern needs to beat those guys. I'm a big Northwestern fan right now because of how they're playing. SEC's got a lot of bullshit games going. USC Oregon's a huge one. It's going to be a rain game. Oregon's a 10.5 point favorite. I think everyone's picking Oregon to win and cover. I don't know. Is USC good? Are they for real? Time will tell. They haven't been good on the road. Arkansas's at Texas, nothing. Michigan State at Iowa, nothing. Iowa should kick their ass, our 16.5 point favorite. Michigan at Maryland, kind of like Maryland to cover, even though Maryland's been so bad these last 3 weeks. They started off really hot. How about this? Coastal Carolina's plus 24 at South Carolina. Coastal Carolina playing okay. South Carolina just, I'm taking Coastal with the points. Nebraska, Penn State's a night game, thank God. Tennessee on at the same time against Florida. That's going to be a big one. Big rivalry, and Florida plays well at home. I might take Florida with the points, but yeah, those are some of the bigger games. Then Arizona State late against Colorado. Crazy, we only got 2 weeks left. Depressing. Your boy says, need Bowers big tonight, chat. Good luck, brother. I hope Bowers goes off for you. Jim, thank you for the 777. He says, almost missed tonight. Power out. Damn, I'm sorry, Jim. A win at Penn State would be the best win of the year. GBR. You're right. It would be. That's crazy to say, given the fact that Penn State's crumbled. But yeah, they've bounced back and looked a lot better. So yes, that would be the biggest win of the year. I would argue if they win at home against Iowa, that might be a bigger win. That's going to be a really tough one. Nebraska, Iowa historically has just been a really tough spot for Nebraska, But either way, I'd like to win both. Hopefully can win one. If Nebraska wins one, imagine 8-4. Given the circumstances, freaking awesome. High Mountain Guy says, imagine the recruits at the Oregon USC game. Dozens of studs, no doubt. Yeah, that's going to be star-studded. 1000%. Don't know what'll happen though. We're still early in the recruiting phase. For Nebraska at least, it's going to be a lot of portal stuff. I don't know. Don't know what's going to happen with Nebraska recruiting. Brett says, the Vols maybe in the Music City Bowl. I think they'll be a good run back. Yeah, Vols Music City Bowl would be cool. It'd be a home game for them, though, so that would suck. But, yeah, we'll see. Jose says, any assistant coaches we can steal? Tons. Does Nebraska want to steal them? I don't know. Is Matt Rhule happy with what he's got, or is he going to have to reevaluate and pick some new guys for key spots? I don't know. Early on. So I'm not too worried about it yet. We still got 2 weeks left of the regular season. We got a whole bowl game, and then we'll start the conversations for what is next. But guys, I just got back from Georgia. I was gone for 4 days. I still got to unpack my bag. I haven't even done my laundry yet. And then I got to cook dinner. So I'll be back on Thursday night, I think, Wednesday or Thursday night. And we'll talk more about the Penn State game. But until next time, thank you for being here. And I will see you in the next one. Go Big Red.